Hi, this is the meeting of the Just Transition Subcommittee meeting for the Vermont Climate Council, May 1st, 2025. And I'm going to drop in the chat our agenda. We're not going to be able to approve all of the minutes because at this point we don't have a quorum, but we can go look through those. So I want to skip to the climate office update.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Sophie, I think this might be in transit, so I'll cover this part. And I was hoping to share my screen. I'm having some tech issues, but I think you might all be
Do
able.
you want
There's
to
this,
show, Liz?
yeah. There's this VCC meeting spring 2025. It's a document listed on the website for this meeting.
I think I can screen share it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Claire, are you in a position where you could take notes for today?
Yeah, I was literally just about to message you to ask if that would be helpful. So
I was gonna do that, but I don't know that I can do that and screen share at the same time.
So
I
yeah.
probably could, but I'm not that talented. So thank you very much.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I thought this would be kind of helpful for this group to see. This was at the recent council meeting. The Climate Action Office proposed this kind of bird's eye view perspective, the next stretch of council meetings to get us to a place where we're adopting a plan at the end of June in line with that July 1 deadline. So coming up, we do have the meeting on Monday where they're going to be really digesting the summary of public engagement. There's also going to be a business as usual model from one of our contractors. But in terms of the plan, getting all this input and feedback from the public engagement sessions is going to be really critical in terms of like revising recommendations and reflecting this new information. And that process really moves through the next few months when it comes to revising recommendations, looking to finalize the chapters. In June, there's like kind of like a handful of new due date, like final due dates for some chapters that weren't due earlier in the process. So like an executive summary, a letter from the council. For this group, that's when your public engagement chapter is due. And then, yeah, bringing it to the end of June where we're adopting that plan. So that's the next couple months. And I think there might have been another document on the website, but I guess I'll just say that recently the council has been looking at like kind of just like guidance for revising chapters in the narrative. So making sure the formatting is kind of following the guidelines like that was presented before. And like with agricultural and ecosystems, they're trying to consolidate. There's like 3 different chapters that chapter leads are now moving into one chapter, for instance. Chapter leads and mitigation are going to meet next week to try to have like a tie through consistent theme throughout all those chapters. So there's still just more kind of like revisions and working through these chapters to create more of like a consistent narrative and story, and trying to like reduce like redundant information where possible. So I think that's kind of where the phase of this council work is at in terms of the chapters, alongside with like digesting this this public input summaries that they're going to get on Monday and using that to make the final recommendations in the chapter. So I think that's where it's at. Kelly, am I missing anything or anything else you'd want to share about where the council is right now?
I don't think you. I think we got it.
Okay.
You did a great job.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's it. Are there any questions? Okay.
Great. So thank you so much, Liz, for that summary.
There is a second document that I could do a quick screen share of, which is
Yes.
the kind of timeline for the plan. There's another document that we shared. I don't know if, see if this is helpful.
Oh,
for any of-
yes. Yes. This is just, this is the chapters and the due dates and like who's responsible for what. So nothing really that new here, other than just a reminder of like the different chapters that are going to be in the plan and the corresponding due dates. And I think, yeah, most relevant to this group would be the public engagement and the equity chapter. I know, Kelly, I think I sent you some just general feedback in terms of like formatting and cleaning up content where possible. I'm not sure if that's how you're going to carry that work forward, but that's kind of like where it's at with that group.
Yeah. I think we were gonna maybe go through some of that today. I have to apologize. I haven't been really on top of this because I've been traveling over the last week or so. So I wasn't able to make our planning meeting for this, planning for this meeting. But I mean, everyone has done an amazing job on this subcommittee pulling together our chapter. So, I think we're in a good place with our main chapter, and then there's the um the public engagement chapter, which is something that we still are gonna be able to help with. And so Sophie's gonna help us, summarize what we did, all of that stuff. So, um, yeah, I'm going back to the agenda. Um, I'd love to hear more from Sophie. Are you here, Sophie? Sophie, can you also
Hey.
share? You were good. I didn't plan the agenda, so y'all who were there, who were able to make that meeting, please just take the reins.
Yeah, I'm happy to, Kelly.
Thank
So
you.
I think we thought it was helpful to sort of like share what the upcoming Vermont Climate Council meetings were focused on and some of the deadlines that existed in June that Liz went over. And then the reviewing of the revised climate action plan specific dates that relate to some final changes to our just transition equity chapter, and then the finalization of the public engagement chapter. So I think that was the first piece. I think the last update that we thought would be valuable to hear from the Climate Action Office was to just sort of give us some kind of synopsis of how the public engagement sessions have gone so far. So there was one earlier today. There's one final virtual public engagement session, I believe. I think it's the last one on May 6th. That's sort of a youth focused meeting. And so we just thought we would hear from Sophie of like how they've gone so far, any themes that have emerged. What's your sense of how the meetings have went? Was there good participation? Just like kind of catch us up on kind of how the public sessions have been received so far.
Sure thing. And I apologize to be on my phone.
Okay.
Thanks for your patience. Um, we've held 7 in-person meetings around the state. We'll make a little map both of where those in-person meetings were and the number of people that each of them attracted, as well as who attended, like the geographic distribution of who was able to attend the virtual meetings. And that can be included. That basically from all of the meetings, we're making this big, massive summary. It's going to have all of the detailed data of all the input that we received from everybody at the meetings. But then it's also going to have these consolidated summaries with really clear takeaways and like, here were the major themes. And my hope is that that summary, which we'll deliver to the council by the end of the day tomorrow, will be actionable and kind of a helpful guide for them as they continue their revision work. in terms of how the meetings went, I thought they were mostly successful. We received a lot of positive feedback. We also received some really great critical feedback. There was a lot to digest. As we know, and we've been talking about in Just Transitions, plain language is essential, but the council is not amenable to, having the actions kind of made into plain language. And there's, fair reasons for that in terms of like, they're very technical, but that was definitely a challenge that we knew we would kind of have that stumbling block. And we definitely heard about that from people of like, this is a huge amount of information to digest. And there's jargon in here. And, we talked about whether we could create a glossary. Again, that would have been something that the Climate Council would have had to like approve. So that was not feasible in terms of process. So definitely could be some improvements for next time. What else? There was good attendance. I think we did not, like, my vision of to what extent the engagement really reached frontline and impacted communities, I think did not fully come to fruition. And I definitely feel like there's things that I could have done better for my part to have made that be the case. So I feel like there's definitely lessons learned. That said, I heard from a couple of people who were just really pleased with the experience. Like, it felt that it felt, let me say, I'm trying to use people's exact words. A couple people mentioned that, like, it was a good example of democracy, of people getting together to talk about issues around a table with one another and sometimes disagreeing on things. A couple people, I heard from one person who had been at the original Climate Action Plan events and noted that the change, or it was an improvement. People responded well to like the funding exercise and the story booth. So having some of those interactive activities seemed to go well. Yeah, those are some of the highlights that come to mind in terms of how the engagement events went. And then if anybody else who was attending one of the events, I know Matthew came to the St. Albans one. I know that Kelly went to two in her counselor role. From that role of like participating / listening, I think it could be nice to just hear some quick reflections from others who were there of what worked and what could be improved.
Matthew, your thoughts?
Yes, and thank you, Kelly, for being there. And yes,
Oh,
well,
and
what we
and
did.
great to meet you in person.
Thank you. I mean, I'm a busy person across the state, and I do this because, like I said, it comes back to participation. And if we don't participate, then we all lose. Doesn't matter who you talk to about it. But yes, from what me and Kelly, or I should say, from my experience there, I see, it's just, basically they come back to what everybody was there agreeing what I was telling the state from all along is, if we can't simplify with plain language and try to cut down on somebody's, technicality or practicality, then the message we're sending out there, or I'm heard of, is not connecting. Basically, you're the reason why I say that demographics doesn't add up. We got aging demographics. We got to adjust to the demographics of the state. If we cannot adjust, then we have failed already. And not just within ourselves, but the failed state of trying to promote this, climate action plan. So it does bring inclusivity. And to me, it's like, if we can't get participants, and this is what I'm seeing in all of my other subcommittees, and they're saying the exact same thing. If we can't simplify, make plain language, as you said, Mike, I do not know what, Sophia, good question. I don't know what the cost is going to be, or the finance is going to be for the climate change to start recommending or trying to adjust on the fly. I know you can't flip a switch and overnight and hope it works, but also it, I understand it takes time, but from what I'm hearing from the St. Albans event, it was basically not easy to understand, not easy to read, not easy to read the room, because like I said, and I've been saying this not just in this committee, but through the Medicare, the whole entire state of Vermont. Let's be honest. I've been saying this to the whole entire state. If we cannot connect the language barrier access need that everybody has, remember, I see this as a demographic issue that we need to adjust, quickly, because those individuals may not participate, which meaning we lose no matter how we look at it, how much we put the plan forward. We're going to need people to support these climate plans. And if you're talking scientific to them or a doctor to them, they'll say, sorry, I can't, I can't join. Then we lose. It doesn't matter at the end, it's, to me, the way I look at it is we want to invite them in so they can participate. It's just how can we do it feasibly, what Sophia says, and make sure it doesn't cost a lot of money to put that adjustment forward, because we got to adjust now, because what I'm seeing is people are dropping left and right, and that just makes it harder for us to do our job together as a collaborative effort to make sure that we're bringing that, not just inclusivity to the state, but also making sure that we're still rolling out that progress of protecting every single individual across Vermont statewide. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I see, Kelly, you have your hand up, and then Mona, you after.
Yeah, I went to 2 events as a as a helper through the RPCs were support, the regional planning commissions were support on a number of the meetings. So I was at the Bennington and the Rutland one last night. And yeah, I would definitely agree with Sophie that at least definitely with the Bennington one, where I was familiar with pretty much everybody that was there, it was very much preaching to the choir. Folks who already are engaged and have the time privilege to show up to an evening meeting. And they're a great group of people. I think it was a good discussion at the Bennington meeting still, and last night as well. But I think also there's some public engagement fatigue that I'm seeing, like in our area. And I see other people nodding, so maybe that's the case in other parts of the state as well. And we're just at a really difficult national moment right now where, like, I don't want to downplay the Vermont Climate Action Plan isn't important, because it is, but there are people like pretty much every multiple days or at least once a week, there's protests happening in Bennington over various human rights issues. So there's people are really focusing their energy on that. And I think that's totally fair and valid. Like there's some very, very serious issues with our democratic system right now and just basic human rights. And so I think it's difficult to get, I think, to broaden the engagement for the climate action plan in the context of the national moment that we're in right now. And I think that's just, there's nothing we could do about that. There's that aspect is no one in Vermont's fault, really. But anyway, so that's just something I've kind of been observing largely, that there's engagement fatigue, and what energy people do have are going towards fighting for basic human rights that are getting taken away. So
yeah, I'll just note I need to jump, but thank you for all you're doing. And can reach me by email if needed.
Thank you so much, Liz, for your update and all
Yeah,
that.
of course.
I really
Bye.
appreciate you here. Mona.
Yeah, this is what I was worried about, that the council themselves, they start saying, oh, we don't have to provide plain language. This is, we don't have to, and then what?
So, Mona, can I ask you can you speak more on that? What
Yeah.
are you?
So when I think her name is Liz, oh no, Sophie was actually saying that the council, or maybe I misunderstood, that you were, saying, we don't have to provide the information in a plain language, or we don't have to
Oh, but we want,
translate the documents, or we don't
Yeah.
have to.
we
because
want to. But we want to, right?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
We want to. And I think it's not mandated, but it's like maybe it's a moral mandate that we need to do this, because this is something we need to do what we can to make this plan come out in as best with the resources we have available. Make it come out in plain language, translate it, do all the things we can. And it's not easy because we don't have a ton of financial resources, or honestly, it's not financial even. It's like maybe just like knowing how to ask for the right things in the right places at the right time. It's a
But
lot.
we
Translation
yeah.
is tough,
Yeah,
right?
we are in a constitutional crisis right now. The people who go and demonstrate, they've been taken and put, for deportation. So, everybody now is focusing on, on their own safety now, and even he's deporting people with citizenship. So I'm not sure, if even the climate council itself, themselves, they're gonna be able to, to say anything. Yeah, all what I see is that the people are removing actually the word equity from every single thing they have envisioned, from their mission, from their vision, and from their values, and they try to find somewhere around that. And instead of focusing on how actually to do it, no, they are focusing on, because all these agencies are funded by the federal government in some way. The state is having its own share from the federal government, so nobody wanted to lose that. This is what I am depressed.
Mona, you always speak in a way that I really admire you, Mona. Thank you. This isn't I can probably bring us back on our back to our agenda, but Mona, thank you. And thank you for speaking the truth. I really appreciate it. So for what we're doing
Do you want
here,
me to kind of kick off this next section, Kelly, just to kind of get us?
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Different. I mean, Mona. Thank you. Thank you, Mona. Happy, go for it.
Okay. So this next section of the agenda, we wanted to just touch base on the actual tasks that we have as a subcommittee around crafting chapters. So there's two. So there's some edits that were provided, Kelly, that I think that you have as our council rep on the Just Transition Equity chapter that we can talk about, kind of like what the next steps are, how we want to review or consider those final edits. And then Sophie has put some time and maybe can give us an update on kind of some preliminary drafting of the public engagement chapter, and had put in her email kind of from last month, or maybe it was even in March, kind of a call to subcommittee members that may want to be involved in playing a role in drafting sections of that public engagement chapter basing on the outline and the first draft that Sophie prepares. And so we now know that that chapter is due on June 9th, and there's probably some earlier deadlines for internal kind of completion that we need to be aware of. But those are the next two sections or components of this next section of the agenda. So Kelly, do you want to talk first about kind of like the technical edits or, formatting questions that came on our Just Transition chapter, and kind of share what you were thinking about how we might address those?
I have to admit, I don't know that I've seen any of those like actual edits or recognitions or anything like that. So I don't know if you or Sophie or anyone else has seen them.
Yeah, I think Liz shared them at the last council meeting, but I could be wrong. Maybe it's for the next, maybe it's coming up on the 5th.
At the council meeting, like full
Yeah,
council.
maybe it's
I think
coming
it
up
was-
at the council meeting on the 5th. I'm sorry, I'm so not involved in that process anymore that I can't be of much help.
Yeah, no, I feel bad. I've been traveling the whole weekend, like whole last weekend, starting at Thursday, and I'm just
Yeah,
I'm
that was
trying to
my
do my best.
understanding, is that they were shared at the last council meeting, Kelly, so I don't know. So that's why it's kind of
Oh.
pinpointing you, because I don't know that they did not come to me. So
Okay, so as far as I know, our Just Transitions chapter has not been edited or reviewed or anything like that by anyone else. The only thing I've missed is there was a steering committee meeting on Monday while I was traveling and I missed it. But no, I don't think we have any feedback. All we know is that, and Sophie, if you heard anything different, let me know. But no, as far as I know, our chapter, our whole thing we wrote is like still just okay, it's out there. Anyone have feedback? But we haven't really formally submitted it for feedback. So that's what I think I think that's where we stand.
Yeah, I feel like I think that's right, Kelly. We could maybe send an email to Liz to just kind of confirm, hey, is there anything specific to the Just Transitions chapter that's come up? But I really doubt it. I was just looking back at the last climate council meeting, which was on April 14th, and there are some slides about editing guidance for the chapters, but I know that Liz has a more robust document that she's working on with the draft guidance.
Yeah.
So it's too bad that she's not here to just clarify everything for us. Totally understand, but I think that is going to be shared at the meeting on the 5th of getting. But I could actually hold on. Let me look at the agenda for the 5th because that would say.
now I'm sending a note to Liz right now.
Oh, there's no agenda for the
And-
5th yet. Never mind.
And the thing is, yeah, so like we congratulations to all of us. We are way ahead of it. Like everybody else, almost all the other subcommittees, it's been like one person writing it who hasn't had any feedback from the rest of their subcommittee, or probably now they have, but we did it. We got the chapter drafted. We talked about it in our subcommittee. We got feedback. We were like, it's ready for feedback from the public. And then it's okay. It's not meant to be ready yet, but it will go out there in the next public feedback period. But also the other subcommittees are dealing with a lot. They're trying to put like all these policies and suggestions forward. So that's a big deal. So anyway, so our chapter, I think, we have an opportunity to just do like some edits or formatting or whatever we think we need to do, but I think we all signed off on it. So I think we're pretty good. So I want to know if we have any other like last minute things, but I think if no one here is like, oh no, it's terrible, we have to fix this one thing or whatever, I think we're pretty good on sending it out. And then the public engagement chapter, that's the other big thing that's coming out of our subcommittee, but Sophie's gonna help with that. So, Sophie, did you want to talk about that a little bit? Like what's the process on that, or? Is that,
Yeah, that would be great. I was hoping to have something a little bit more robust for you all today.
Yeah.
But with all the public engagement that's actually happening, didn't quite have the capacity to write about it. But what is happening is that that summary that I mentioned, we're working hard on that. And what I'm thinking is that the chapter would be kind of a narrative and then link to make sure people can access that full summary, which is going to be like dozens and dozens of pages. So all of that like full bulk of information of like here is all the engagement can be linked to, and then the chapter that we do, that's just a couple pages, is like the overarching narrative of why engagement is important, what we like, the general approach that we took this time around, the general process for incorporating feedback and how subcommittees work with that, which I know is on noted on the agenda and was sent around in the email as homework for subcommittee liaisons to talk with subcommittee co-chairs, either through email or a quick chat about just like getting a quote or their reflections on that. Or any reflections on the, incorporating the just transitions principles in the whole process. Yeah, so I guess I do have a process question, which is about like, okay, this is due on June 9th. It's May 1st right now. How would the subcommittee like to go about, receiving the draft that I create, commenting on it, contributing to it by June 9th? Is another meeting the way to go about that? Do you want to send me comments directly and I incorporate them? What does timing look like for folks? Those would be my questions to you all. And then, if you have any comments on what I just said about content and approach, which I know we've reviewed at past meetings too, always happy to hear that as well.
if we don't have other comments immediately, any questions for Sophie or anything about the chapter for public engagement? Sorry, I
I
have,
would love to see Sophie, the kind of first final draft of this chapter emailed out to the full subcommittee, and then an opportunity for subcommittee members to not do a reply all, but send individual comments back to Sophie, Kelly, and I if you have any edits or any any feedback on additions or changes. Just so, and I think what worked really well about the creation of the Just Transition Equity chapter is that people helped author different sections. I recognize that people may not feel they have the capacity to do that on another chapter, so maybe not that same kind of like full engagement effort, but I think it would be great if we could, put it out there in May, give subcommittee members, 10 days, 2 weeks to be able to take a look if the timeline allows, and have comments or contributions back to Sophie in time to meet the June 9th deadline. Does that feel reasonable to you, Sophie?
From my end, that works great.
Mm-hmm. So,
Oh, I see
how
Matthew
about
has a hand.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, yes, it's just about how we're gonna do that process, how we're gonna implement. Plus, we want some time to review it because not like not all is our scientists. Let's be honest. You want it to be vetted very carefully too as well. Like I said, it comes back to that what Mona's been saying. It comes back to plain language, and if it doesn't work with somebody, that could hurt. I won't say that that'll make our mission process even more slowly. Like you said, to some people that have no capacity, maybe they're doing like what I'm doing, just want to make things more easier, more, inclusive. Like I said, it's just, that we can't, it's like we want work smarter, not harder, approach to some of this stuff, because you want, like I said, it comes back down to participation. And like I said, some of those subcommittees could have other things going, or they don't can't, or they're like me, or they could be like me. I can't get what you're saying. I don't know what you're saying, as an example. I don't know what you're talking about because it's not in a way where I understand that. And it's just, I think having to try to digest what we're looking at, reviewing at, might be might make some climate subcommittees to take a look at that. They just probably want to digest it the best they can, the best I can, because I know what you're saying, but I'm trying to digest that format in a way where I know what makes sense and what you're trying to make sense of. And that, like I said, it comes back to, unfortunately, to that plain language model, which it needs more now if you want participation to continue. And like I said, I'm seeing this not in my other committees, a big problem that their participation are dropping off because they may not have time, or it's just too technically complicated. It ain't just education, is medical and insurance too as well. Vermont's facing that too as well. It's just, it's like, how do we get here and how can we get ourselves out of this, predicament, knowing that we made this mistake ourselves. How can we get ourselves out of it? And hoping that everybody else can support us going forward in a better process, but basically a better process that could make it easier to what we're trying to say to understand to the public. Thank you.
Matthew, I appreciate that. And I think the plain language review that you and Mona did of the Just Transition Equity chapter was an important step in our process. So I hear that, and I think we should try to build that in to the timeline. So I'm wondering, so I'm going to try to give us some deadlines. So Sophie, do you feel that you could have a solid draft out to the Just Transition Subcommittee members by May 14th? Is that too soon?
I will actually be taking a much needed vacation until May 14th.
Okay.
So
yes, it is needed and deserved, of course. Yeah.
how about
The 23rd?
yeah, or even like the 20th
Okay.
or the 19th? Is the 19th? The 19th is a Monday.
It is, yeah.
So I could set aside time on the 15th to draft it.
So what
and
if
get it
we
out to you on
set a
Monday.
draft to Just Transition Subcommittee members by, I'm going to give you an extra day just because
Okay.
life gets in the way,
Very generous.
by May 20th. And then subcommittee members would have until May 29th or 30th, 29th to offer comments. Matthew and Mona, I don't want to volunteer you for this role again, but would you guys want to do a plain language review at the same time? Would you be willing to do a plain language review? Would you do it at the same time, or would you want to have then Sophie incorporate edits and have it come back for plain language review?
This Matthew, I mean, me and like we did last time, we don't mind putting a review and then have you guys, have Sophia just to have you guys also review it too as well. We don't mind reviewing it, see the draft documents and see, what makes it sound, make it sound, simple, not just sound simple, but sound that simplify text and basically wordsmithing in a way where it makes sense, that sounds basically sounds, complete, but yeah, we don't mind, just give us a date and time when do you want us to review that, like I said, whenever Sophia's done, because like I said, this is on her, this is the reason why I say I do things, transparent, but I'm also understanding that, trying to trying to incorporate what Sophie is saying into all this. Sometimes you don't have the finance to have a computer that can do all, or the members too, like I said, if they're at full capacity already. I'm just trying to make sure that, Sophia has that accessibility and combination she needs for her access need to do the job we want her. And that's what I was just, trying to, to give her that, time, to do what she needs to do. yeah, if she could get as soon as she's done what she needs to do with that draft, just send it to us ASAP so we can get on that as soon as possible so we can complete it, and then we'll let you know if it's complete and or if the sound sensing completed. Then I'll let you, Kelly, know, and we can move forward on that if it's approved. And it or is it sound complete. Thank you.
Mona's giving a thumbs up. So I'm gonna say, tell me what you all think about this timeline. So Sophie will work on the first solid draft, get that of the public engagement chapter to Just Transition Subcommittee members by Tuesday, May 20th. Subcommittee members will have until May 30th to make any comments, edits, and for a plain language review, because I don't know that we're going to have as much content that's new and added. I think this is just going to be a solid draft from Sophie, and then we'll have some edits possibly. So I think that could go through the plain language review, and then it will be back to Sophie for that first week in June for any final language, and then it would, we will have our Just Transition meeting on the 5th. So that gives us a chance to do like a final approval of the chapter before it goes to the Climate Council on June 9th. Does that sound like that would work for everyone?
Makes sense. The timing looks good
Okay.
from my hand.
That sounds good. Abby, when or whomever is taking notes, and I could also do this, but once we have that written up, I think it would be good just to share that with Liz and just double check, like, hey, does this align with like when the thing needs to go to the council?
I can send a time. I mean, I think Claire's taking notes. Go ahead, Claire, please.
I was gonna say I can send Liz a quick message with the timeline and just confirm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just put in the chat. This is sort of what I heard and wrote down for the timeline. Okay. Great.
Abby,
Thank you all.
Abby, are you ready to move to the next thing, which would be like our priority actions of the climate action plan, all that kind of stuff, like what people's thoughts are?
Yeah, so happy to. Thanks, Kelly. So
Yeah,
one of the
like that.
big kind of like takeaways homework was for us, if folks had an opportunity to look at the draft priority actions in this revised climate action plan. I just kind of posted that link to those draft priority actions in the chat. And our goal was to ask folks to read through some or all of them, pick a section that you felt most attentive to and most intrigued by, and then hopefully be able to bring to this conversation, which we can spend the next hour if there's content to review for the next hour or less, reviewing those priority actions that you bring forth and think about which are most compelling to Vermont at this time. What's some kind of urgent feedback to improve any of the draft priority action recommendations that are in the revised plan, and then if there are any recommendations of what may be missing from these priority actions that you had a chance to review. So this is kind of the opportunity, Kelly, that you really set up for this subcommittee to say, hey, shouldn't we give kind of some sort of equity and just transition review of all the priority draft action or draft priority actions in the revised plan before it goes final. And these are the same draft priority actions that were reviewed and considered at the public input sessions and what the public saw as part of that process. So, yeah, I'm happy to. I did get an email from Danielle, and I'm happy to share Danielle's feedback.
Yeah.
Because she knew she couldn't be here for tonight's meeting. But I can also I'd love to turn it over to other subcommittee members and hear if there was anything that struck you as you read through the draft act priority actions, things that you want to share, things that you want to bring attention to. Allie.
This is sort of like a meta comment, not about any specific recommendation, but about them collectively. And it's sort of in the same like vein as plain language, which is just like the sheer volume of how many priority action, like there's like 200 some actions and then 54 or 50 something, I don't know the exact number. 54 is in my head for some reason. Priority actions. And we heard at both of the events that I attended that like that's just too many for a priority list. And that it would be more helpful if in a future iteration, because I don't know that the council is gonna go down from 54 for this plan. But for a future plan for them to have a goal of like 25 or 20, or sub 20. Because I think people were just like 54 priorities. Like, if I had 54 priorities, like my head would, that were like top priority, my head would explode. So, that's just something I heard that I think agree with, that could also just help with some of the accessibility for future public engagement of instead of asking people to read 54 or try and read through as many of them as they can in the time allotted, that have a trimmed down list.
Yeah, appreciate that feedback, Kelly. I suspect that came up in a variety of different comments and ways. And it is hard. I mean, it's a lot of content to try to sift through and recognize that this is the priority list. Like, it didn't come up at every meeting. Yeah. So Sophie's saying in the chat that it came up at, she thinks, almost every meeting in the public sessions. Okay, Matthew. Yeah.
Yes, to be able to clarify, if we had to cut down this, priority list, and I agree, that's a lot. There is a way we can make a rubric or method like a survey method, and just say what are just for example, if you had a magic wand that can cover three, topics or three priorities, in Vermont, what would that be? And we'll just put them out like a list, and they have to pick three only. They can't just pick, it'll be multiple, but it'll be the top. Each of those categories will be basically what I'm gauging would be what are in each of these sectors, what is the number one answer for each category, or the number one suggestion or best pick of each category of there, and then have them like, if you had a magic wand, which of these sections would we prioritize, that are most needed now? Like I said, which ones could be, as a word for priority first or priority last, which meaning what is needed now that we can work on, that we could do feasibly, financially, what we can do right now, and then try to work on other stuff later on and try to, get the best, but like I said, it comes back to data. With that survey, you can see that data right there and see, oh, this has the best, best feedback of them all. Now I can use that, from that section. So anything from electricity, climate resilience, cross mitigation, anything, agriculture, if, like I said, it's just a top one question from each of those sections has the most top pick, basically the most, feedback on, they get all into a lottery, basically. And then you bring that, when that lottery is completed, you can actually, send out to the public and the public can only choose, the top three, choose any of those three, in those sections, only three, and better got one, three, I'm confused myself. one for each, question, of each of those sections, but have a question that's basically popular with the group, basically. And that will give you somewhat to streamline this process, give you somewhere it's going to end up going, but also will give basically the best, you can give out to as well to the public, and you can have the best, probably get the best data that way of where is this, conversation is going to go to, which is basically from our first priority to our last priority, and prioritize that method of a rubric. So we're trying to basically get to ones that need fixed now, and then come back to the ones that least need to be fixed. If you know what I mean. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Matthew. I think you're offering a process recommendation that my guess is that that's not going to fit into the timeline for this revised plan, but maybe that's a great recommendation to consider 5 years from now at the next revised climate action plan, because we're certainly not done kind of considering priorities or engaging in action around these plans. But yeah, what do you think, Kelly?
Oh, I was gonna add, this has the idea of having, and I apologize, I had to step away, so I might not have gotten everything of what Matthew was saying, but the idea of, okay, way too many different priorities. How do we do this? How do we categorize or whatever? Like, they're all really important. And the fact that we want to have probably like 250 of them, as they're all super important. How do we make them manageable? And we've talked about different types of ways to categorize and say, okay, these ones, and so at the steering committee level of the Climate Council, we've talked about different ways of doing this. So there may be an opportunity based, the public feedback has been kind of, everyone said the same thing, like, it's a lot. It's a lot. How do we digest this? So maybe taking some of the things and saying, these are the most crucial big things that are going to be like the boulders. We need to move these boulders into place. It's going to be a big lift. These other things are like the small rocks that we're going to put in, and they're important, but they're a small lift because they're little rocks, that kind of thing. Trying to come up with the things that if we don't do these, we are not going to have a future. These things that are small lift, big outcome, and try to rank it that way. We don't have it. I don't think anyone's come up with any ideas, but that's something that's definitely been talked about, because the sheer number of priorities is hard to grapple with. So just wanted to share that that's something that people are. So Ellie, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I just thought of something that is feedback that is a little bit more specific on I don't know if it goes to just one priority action or those that mention weatherization specifically. Like, I was looking through some of the actions that talk about the priority of weatherization, especially for low and moderate income households. And somebody brought up at the Rutland meeting last night, which I thought was like worth elevating, is that they didn't see any mention of continuing support for the weatherization repayment assistance program. That could be in the full 200 some list, I'm not sure, but it didn't make its way into the priority list. And there's the priority action I was looking at talks about like securing financing for, low moderate income households and that sort of thing. But it doesn't talk about that program, which I think is a pretty like interesting model of basically like people not having to pay the upfront costs associated with weatherization and fuel switching and doing it via a payment on their utility bill. So I think it's also called on-bill financing. So somebody brought that up last night, like, why isn't this being talked about or supported like, why isn't there an action underneath the weatherization area saying like continue support for this program? Because I think it's a 2-year pilot program, so I don't know, maybe they I don't know how the program's been going. Maybe it's not in there because it's been a complete failure, but it doesn't sound like it sounds like a good idea. So anyways, I wanted to elevate that and see if that's something that to put a bug in the council's ear about.
I appreciate you elevating that because I know that was something that was part of the initial climate action plan. And I think it might, hopefully we can get an answer. Claire, are you taking notes? Is Claire taking, okay. But hopefully we can get an answer because I do think it might be wrapped up a little bit in like some of the other things that have happened since the first climate action plan, that they're sort of rolled into some of the programs that are actually happening, but I'm not sure. So
And
thank you so much for raising that because that's really important.
I do know that there has been challenges with uptake of that program. I feel like very few people have actually gone through it. I know VHFA, I believe, has done an assessment of like why that may be. So I don't have the details of that, but I know I've heard them speak to that being a challenge with that program. So to your point, Callie, that could be one contributing factor, but we could certainly follow up.
And also, yeah, Danielle had some really excellent comments that she wrote to us to the co-chairs and about just, what we should be doing to make sure that we're taking into account what the labor and the workforce, what their needs are, and also what the realities are, and how get people trained up in trades of like, you know, being able to install all of this great new technology for, electric heat pumps and all that kind of stuff. So, it looks like
I'm
Matthew had his
happy
hand
to
up.
read some of Danielle's comments, but Matthew, I see your hand. Do you want to
Yeah.
go first?
Yes, and thank you for answering. I think, and I can answer some of the questions that you've been asking about. And yes, I've been there. I was on 350 Vermont, so yes, I do know about the weatherization program. It's due to they used to have grants, to support that pilot program. That has officially stopped, so they're out of money. So if you're asking, why hasn't that been discontinued? I think it comes down to finance and budget. They don't have any more money to continue that program. That's not unfortunate. It did succeed. It did succeed in Enosburg, and it was a great turnout. They don't, like everything else in Vermont. It's money, finance, investment, money, money, and money. It comes down to money, and it's pretty. The way I look at it, not everything has to be money, but we also know that we can't run a state without money either. And we can't do things when people say we do things for free, and we also, not everything is free either. And it's just, it comes back down to this financial and it's just financial bureaucracy, it's financial burden of the system because it wasn't built. No system is built perfect in Vermont. We know that. We understand that because we hear from other systems like medical and education are in the same situation. It's just, the processes are not just easy to understand, they're difficult to understand. The mechanisms in place are just as tricky as the actions being provided because Vermont is a complex and technicality state. There's no easy, I shouldn't sit there and say there's no easy answer, but there's a lot of challenging answers to it because nobody has an answer. I mean, nobody's perfect. And it's like, trying to answer that question, $1 million question, it's if you don't have that, answer, it's hard to come up with a good one when you gotta collaborate with the systems that you have. And It makes it harder to just do if you talk about one system, then you got to talk about the rest because they're all on the same boat. Pretty much, that's why I'm just letting you know about that part. It's just they ran out of money. They didn't. Was success. Organization was successful. They just ran out of money. It comes down to money at this point. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Matthew. That is a good update. I'm not as familiar, so I appreciated hearing that around the weatherization program. So I'm thinking it might be helpful to share some of Danielle's comments because I think they're really strong and a good example of like some real tangible improvements that I think could be made to these priority actions as they're currently drafted. So her first comment was, I'm going to kind of capture some and paraphrase bits too, but her comment was, I think it's important that contractors who are hired pay prevailing wages, follow and maintain strong safety standards, use apprenticeships, and classify workers correctly, similar to the responsible contractors ordinances passed in Montpelier, Barre, and Burlington. And her comment was like, how she's not sure how to incorporate that into these recommendations. It almost makes me think that that's like a just transition chapter call out box maybe or something of like just acknowledging that like this is an important consideration for equity when kind of doing the transition to a different workforce.
I love that idea, Abby, because I read that comment from Danielle and I was like, this is super important. Again, it needs to it's in, and she said this is in the implementation. Like, we're like, how are we gonna make this happen? But I think we could write a call out box, say like that would go in that section of like maybe somewhere in the chapter that leads up
Workforce
to,
chapter.
right? Like in that, because was that in workforce
Workforce is
specifically
a cross-cutting issue. Yeah.
in the cross-cutting chapter, like maybe a call out box being like, when we implement this, because I read that and I was like, Danielle's on point. I think
Yeah.
she's got it, and it shouldn't be lost. It's
Yeah.
not something to have. I mean, the priority actions are pretty simple. Like, we don't go into detail any of them, but that's a really, really good point. I mean, I think she's got something there that's pretty critical.
I agree.
And a lot of her recommendations, but yeah. I like that idea of maybe making that into a call out.
Okay. Great. So that was one. A second general kind of overarching comment that Danielle made was the cost for new electrical sources and system upgrades should not burden the ratepayer, especially renters and low income or moderate income households. Does that also, for those that may be more familiar with the recommendation, the priority actions that speak to kind of electrical systems, is that an edit to a particular priority, or is this also a call out box?
My understanding is that that's sort of baked in, but I don't know if others have a different read on that, or Sophie or Matthew.
Yes, that one definitely was baked in. I mean, because it was, it was geared toward the theme was equity, and yes, that was completely baked into our, priorities, and it wasn't just, what we set out to do. I think it was already there in the beginning, in the first place, because it was being asked already more than once, about affordability, you know, and and not just affordability method, but feasibility, about cold climate heat pumps, about it's pretty much everything you're saying is that electricity sector, you know, making sure that they're efficient, efficiencies, with the lighting, efficiencies, and that's pretty much was already baked in there. I think has been enhanced with the other, characteristics of it, but I think it was baked in there, but also enhanced at the same time. Thank you.
When you guys are saying baked in, does that mean to you that it's captured sufficiently in the plan already?
Yes, this is Matthew. Yes, it's been already been in the plan for a while. So like I said, we're basically repeating what's in the plan, and it has been in there for a while.
Sorry, I'm moving from one room to another, but uh yeah, I believe a lot of what Danielle raised on that front that has been very much thought about and incorporated into like the details that are what we would call getting into the weeds, but that were already written down, but just weren't part of like the big, like high level flashcards that we were reviewing. But worth noting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Okay.
can share that that point on electricity increases because of renewable energy, which is part of what Danielle is talking about, should not burden low moderate income ratepayers. We've seen that a lot in written comments that have come in. And I'm not sure, I'm actually curious if system upgrades could, in Danielle's comment, could either refer to like upgrades to the entire grid or the household level upgrade of like installing a panel at higher amperage. I think that she's talking about, because this is talking about ratepayers, I think she's talking about grid upgrades that will be necessary because that would impact electricity cost. And without having the draft priorities in front of me, I can't call to mind whether this is explicitly named in them, but it sounds like from what Kelly's saying that maybe context beyond those draft priorities gets into this, like maybe the chapter that talks about cross-sector mitigation or something like that.
Okay. Yes, Matthew, go ahead.
Yes, Sophia, you're correct. Because the other one you talked about having a home ratepayer paying a lot for their house to be upgraded. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. If they're already low moderate, you're talking for a panel upgrade. And yes, I looked at this. For a nice panel upgrade, it's gonna cost you $100,000 right there and then. And like I said, I looked at that too as well. It's not a cheap investment at all. And like I said, I do think you are correct. She's talking about the grid because a electrical panel upgrade currently and I'm seeing this from right now, it's about 100K, 100,000K to be spiced for a nice panel upgrade, and that is actually current. If you need to be efficient, if you want to make your house more efficient, and that comes back down to your panels upgrades, which are not cheap at all. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I am going to try to do a screen share because now Danielle had a few specific recommendations that pertain to specific draft priority action. So the first one was in speaking to cross-cutting issue workforce development number 10, which reads increase the number of students who can be supported in the career and tech ed system in the state. And her comment was, it isn't the number of students that is the problem in the trades program, it's the number of instructors and adequate space to be able to hold the training. She said it's very difficult to hire skilled trades professionals as teachers. There's a lengthy 4-year process to obtain a teaching license, as well as a huge cut in pay for many to enter the teaching profession. There's also limited space to add new programs to existing CTE centers, and it is cost prohibitive to build new spaces. So this to me feels like such a valuable and practical example of the type of edit that could and should be recommended to this priority action. That we could be more specific to be able to demonstrate what we need or what the plan intends to do by increasing the number of students who can be supported.
And to me, this feels like a situation where Danielle identified this is there, the gap here is the actual number of teachers and the amount of space, but
Yeah.
potentially the thing that the barrier might be who can be a teacher and what can be a space. And also I think Danielle mentioned that a lot and for some of the training programs, it's all virtual, which is not great for learning how to deal with a lot of like maybe knowing how to do wiring and stuff like that, but like even then, a lot of plumbing and HVAC, welding or whatever these things are, like you really need to be there in person. And so having virtual training for most of these is not probably the best. So I would love to see if this thing that Danielle flagged is something where we could connect with um other folks and say like, okay, well, we identified the need. We need more people doing this, but also here's the other barrier, which is the trainers and the physical space in which they could train. How do we
Yeah.
make this work? So I thought that was a really great thing to like bring up and lift that one up. That seemed kind of actionable and really important. Important and actionable. Yay.
Yeah, I agree. So we can capture that in notes. I'm assuming that the process for, can we just review what the process is following this conversation of how our edits are making it to who they need to make it to?
Yeah. Good question. Definitely having it in our notes. So I'm Claire, you're taking notes, right, Claire? Please. But yes, taking the notes, you gotta you
If you could repeat it one more time, that would be helpful to make sure I captured it.
but you are okay. I just want
Yes,
to make sure
thank you.
I am the world's worst note taker. That's probably I'm exaggerating. I'm definitely in like the bottom percentile of note takers. So for this, so what Danielle and Danielle's email is also something that we can refer back to, but it sounds like basically what we're talking about here is that we have the problem is not entirely getting new people into the trades and getting them um, getting their getting people educated in the trades. It's that we have a limited number of teachers because there's a huge barrier. Like you have to have a certain number of hours or years or whatever. Plus, to decide that you're going to be a teacher in these, you usually take a pay cut. And then we have limited space for classes. And this is something that we have here in Franklin County. I was visiting a center which was teaching, teaching students and all this stuff. And they did not have, they were like, oh no, we're at capacity. We're not gonna have more students. We don't have room. It's it. We got this. So all of these things are really important. And so if we really, really want more people educated in the trades, we might need to do a couple things to like lower the barrier to get people to be teachers, make new facilities that people can work in, and that kind of thing. But anyway, I think this is more in the implementation, and Danielle said that in um, her email, but we do need to have this noted because that's super helpful and super important to have people who've been there on the ground understanding what's going on to give us feedback.
So I'll just say, I'm happy to try to capture this and send it as an email based on Danielle's comments to you, Claire and Sophie. But Matthew, yes, go ahead. I see your hand.
Yes, and Danielle's right. Like you, Kelly. I'm also a teacher. It's a pretty hard time. For me, it was different. It wasn't about the capacity. It was about, um, in my opinion, it was about who does the teacher look up to, and if you're in his or her grace. With me, it was about biases. That what killed it. That what killed my teaching profession. It wasn't because I didn't like the job. I love teaching. It was the biases within that field. It was like, if you don't, and some of it comes back to discrimination, which you can't unless you can find them and found guilty of it doing it. There's nothing much that you can do about that. But for me, it was, I think it's half that what Danielle said. It ain't just about just not enough teachers. Those teachers may not be coming in for different reasons. Maybe it's because it's a biases with the system itself. The system of Vermont's not perfect. Let's be honest. If it was a perfect system, then we need to be here. And it's just how it is. And from what she's saying is it ain't just getting students, and plus it's a facility ADA requirement. There's a lot of infrastructure in Vermont that are not ADA requirement. American with Disability Act laws that say that, oh, I need a wheelchair ramp, or I need to get in here. For example, some of those facilities don't have that. And half of that, I think I'm seeing that as, also coming back to the demographics, elderly, aging demographics. Some of that's taking play with what we're seeing across not our work, but across the state in general. I'm saying just to get basic access need to these students, and teachers and facilities, it comes back down to what we all don't love, or some of us don't love the word. The word is money and burn and finance, because it's just, it's to me, it's like I would like to have everybody's access needs met here. It's just, I wish that the word money wasn't here, but unfortunately, that's not the way the world works, and that's not how Vermont works. We gotta fortunately have to bring the word money and finance to every conversation, which just makes it which makes it very, very how should I say, depressing. That's the reason why I see a lot of participants. It's just it depresses them to the point that they don't want to do it no more, because it depresses them. And so we got to make sure that we're trying to, and my point of view is try to figure out what Danielle's question is, how can we bring some positivity in the work that we need to do to move forward? And that's just what I'm getting from her message right there. Thank you.
Matthew, thank you for sharing kind of what your experience has been. That's really helpful for us to hear. Okay, I want to share a few more from Danielle because she provided them to us. So we talked about workforce development, cross-cutting issue, recommendation number 11. She also said on number 12, so just after this, that says increase the number of registered apprenticeships that can be supported in the state by Vermont State University, Department of Labor, especially in plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and weatherization. Her comment was that this priority recommendation or priority action should include other registered apprenticeship programs. And she said use or see the UA 693 plumbing, pipe fitting, or the newly created ABC's Construction Academy. So not wanting to limit it just to the Vermont State University that has a lot of the virtual trade apprenticeships, but be more inclusive about additional programming that's available. So I feel like that's, again, another relatively simple kind of edit and improvement to this draft priority recommendation.
Something that I might, a question I would have about that is, because sometimes, it's like, oh, the climate council only has, we can only do this in this area, right? Like, so maybe what Danielle's saying goes outside of the area of our influence, but maybe not. And so I would love to look outside the box and like see who can do things and how we can move the needle. But there might be a reason that this was written the way it was. So I'm not saying to like quash this down, but I want to know why. Why did they only read it that way? Maybe they hadn't thought about all these other things that Danielle knows about, which to me also seems highly likely. But that would be something where this is where I love the fact that we have this amazing resource, like the folks who are working at the state and have done this. I mean, Abby, you and colleagues, like you have so much knowledge and you can help us know what we're doing and how we're going to figure this out. Us regular citizens. So hopefully we can figure something out that will be amazing and we'll like leap out of here like little butterflies. But I love that suggestion, and I think I want to hear about why they might not look at those or why they would, because there might be a reason that they were included. But I also think totally we should, if there's no reason they weren't included, those other groups, like put them in there.
Yeah, that's a good comment. I don't know the answer to that. Looking at the time, I want to make sure we have room for other folks that may have comments. I just put in the chat that Danielle also provided strong support for the public health priority actions number 12 and 15 in the rural resilience and adaptation category, priority actions 7 and 8 in the ag and ecosystem, and the transportation action number 3 in the cross-sector mitigation. Is that right? Cross-sector mitigation? Yes. Section. So she didn't offer any suggested edits, so I don't need to show them on the screen unless folks want me to. But those were other priority, kind of critical support priorities she mentioned. I want to offer some of my own kind of reflections when I read through the priority actions. I was sort of struck by, I guess, a couple things. One, I really liked the cross-sector issue number 14 that was around financing, which said, building off recent climate infrastructure financing efforts, the Vermont State Treasurer, in consultation with the Climate Action Office and the Climate Council, should explore opportunities to further leverage public and private capital to make needed clean energy resiliency and adaptation investments. That sort of felt like an important overarching kind of like investment priority action to consider. So that was sort of like a priority for me. And then when I was looking through the remainder of the recommendations, they sort of fell into 3 categories for me that felt important to kind of start to, in my mind, because I like to bucket things to understand how they connect. And it felt like there were recommendations for municipalities, or priority actions for municipalities, priority actions for homeowners, and priority actions for businesses. And I kind of felt that it was important to sort of identify priorities in each of those 3 categories, that I could identify maybe like one priority that, from my review and my basic understanding, that felt like worth highlighting. And so I can put in the chat kind of like what I saw as those.
And
Yeah.
I would say, Abby, I don't know if others have thought about this and want to put them in the chat. I'm, yeah, I've read these a lot. had my voice, but I want to hear from other folks. So anyone who wants to just anything in the chat or speaking out loud on our subcommittee, I would love to hear it. And Matthew, I see your hand. I do want to give give a second for other folks to write, because some people need to write, some people need to speak. So noted. Also, this is a moment, anyone who hasn't just been looking through these, doing homework, draft priority actions. Dropping this in the chat one more time. Apologize if you've all heard the background noise of my children getting to watch what I think might be The original Snow White? No. Sleeping Beauty, maybe? Disney's Sleeping Beauty? All right. All right. So how are we? Anybody have thoughts? I really want to hear because I've read a lot of these a bunch of times, and maybe many of us have also, and have shared our thoughts. Are there any of the draft priority actions that like shine out or stand out or whatever that we need to talk about? Danielle gave us some examples of things. Anybody have thoughts before we, I think in about, about 10 minutes, we're gonna definitely move to public comment. If anyone's here for that. Anybody wanting to follow in Danielle's footsteps? We talked about this a lot, so I just want to make sure that we have a space. So I think maybe Callie and Mona, yeah, Matthew, you've shared, Callie's shared some, but I want to make sure that we get space for everybody who's going through these to give their thoughts. And this is not the last word, right? We still have time. So any particular like you need to say it right now moment, like anything that's coming up and it's like, oh my gosh. So always anything that's in your brain, whatever so Danielle did a great job writing it out. That's great. We can also have people speak it out, and we had people here tonight doing that, and it's on recording. So we've got that. And our voices as this subcommittee are actually really, it's really powerful to have this just transition subcommittee here to have our voices out there. So yes, that's that's what we're doing right now. I think, oh yeah, I think we have, this is about when we're expecting to do public comment, but I don't think we have any members of the public, but if we do, your time is now. If we have members of the public, you can speak up, raise your hand, unmute. I'm pretty sure, I know everybody here is not a member of the public. I mean, we're all members of the public, but we're all subcommittee members for our wonderful, wonderful helpers. I'm just trying to find my agenda. All right. Okay. So, the last thing here is what's happening next. Oh, yes, we were going to talk about all of the amazing, exciting, nail-biting moments we're going to have coming up with the Climate Council. So we're going to have a bunch of meetings. I think Abby and Sophie, you might have taken that on yourselves.
Yeah, I think what we wanted to talk about as like next steps, which was kind of just to wrap up our conversation today, was to kind of reiterate the responsibility and opportunity we have to provide comment on the public engagement chapter. And we talked about that timeline, and I think we have that pretty well kind of planned, which feels good. And thank you, Sophie, for taking the first draft of that. Then the next upcoming Just Transition Subcommittee meeting will be on June 5th. So that's our June meeting. And then our plan is to not meet in July, August, or September. And then, so we take our sort of summer break, and then in October, we would reconvene again as a subcommittee. In that June meeting, we both have to finalize our public engagement chapter. That's when we kind of give it the blessing before it goes to the Climate Council or the steering committee or wherever it goes on the 9th of June. But we also wanted to focus on, a conversation, of what our re-engagement might look like in the fall. So think through if there's going to be, or talk through whether there's going to be any likely legislative changes, which I don't believe that there will be. I think we kind of talked about that last meeting, that there's unlikely to be any changes to the Global Warming Solutions Act this legislative session. But, maybe other things that we want to kind of focus on when we come back in the fall. I think the October meeting would probably have, space to review the revised climate action plan. But there may be other things that we want to kind of plan for to take up in the October meetings, in our last meeting of the summer on June 5th. And then just a reminder that, and Liz didn't put it in the chat, but I will see if I can try to find it really quickly, that if anyone was interested, there's one final public input session, a virtual session on May 6th. So next week, that as a youth focus session that got added to the calendar kind of later in the process. So it wasn't on the original schedule, as I understand. But I think that means Sophie will do the summary of the meetings that have happened thus far, share that next week, but then we'll add in kind of the the final youth focused session comments and reflections as well to have the full summary. And that was it, unless there were other items around what's next for this subcommittee. I think I can just add, I think figuring out, talking through maybe in June, how we want to explore kind of quorum assistance, or thinking through some follow-up with subcommittee members that may not be able to routinely attend and participate, and just kind of connect to them in person possibly. So that we can find ourselves with a quorum in future meetings, or at least hopefully in June, and then hopefully in October when we meet again.
Yes, thank you. And I really do thank you to everyone who's been here every month. I mean, the folks I see every month, I cannot thank you enough. It's wonderful to have you here every time. I have enjoyed being able to build this community with you and hear your thoughts, and it's important. So and to get to see some of you, I got to meet Matthew in person for the first time. It's just so wonderful. Thank you so much for being part of our Vermont community. It's so important. And I know it can be it can feel a little bit like, oh, why am I doing this? Why? Here we are. But thank you, all of you, for being here. Every time I get to see one of you in person, or get to see you on a video call, I appreciate it. Thank you. So we will see you soon. And I think we have, and any thoughts you have about those priority actions, whatever they are, please do share them, but sooner rather than later, because if it's not tomorrow, it's probably not going to get it. But no, we still have time. Okay, yes, Matthew.
Thank you, Kelly. Yeah, and it could feel when you're doing these, whether you're virtual or in person, it could feel intimidating. Believe me. We were saying climate council was try doing education and medical and insurance. That's just as, and I'm a member of those, and that's just as intimidating as this. Believe me, it's a collaboration effort that's how we survive. That's how we move forward. That's how we move forward with progress. That's how we get along. It's how we do this mission. This goals to achieve is try to do this together in tandem to make sure that we're on this not only all on the same page here, but also making sure that we have each other's back and support each other because this is not a one person that can do it all by themselves. It's going to take a lot of collaboration effort to succeed in this mission. This great, big, grand scale of our goals moving forward to the 21st century of Vermont's climate change economic futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And I think we're gonna end a little early tonight. We didn't have, yeah, I think we wrapped up, right? Anything
I
else?
think we can.
We're good. All right. Oh my gosh. Thank you all. You know what? We're all around the state. It's a really great community we have built without being right near each other. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Appreciate you too. Great to see you all. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great evening. Enjoy the spring weather.